I'm going to show how to make graph paper using Affinity Photo's procedural texture filter. And then I'm going to bring it into Affinity Designer and fill a shape with the graph paper like this. To get started, I'm going to create a new document. I'm going to make it 8.5 by 11 letter size, and usually the default for this is CMYK, so I'm going to make sure I change it to RGB. If it comes up in landscape mode, I'm going to change this one to portrait mode, and I'm going to create that. I'm going to start by filling it with black. I'm going to add a live procedural texture filter. I'm going to add a single equation and assign it to all 3 channels. I'm going to add a real number input, A. I'm going to call this inches, and I'm going to set this to 8.5 because that will be the width of the document. And then I'm going to add another real input. I'll call it D, and this will be the number of divisions per inch. I'm going to set that to 5 for now. Alright, I'm going to create a variable v equals a 2-element vector for my coordinate system, and I'm going to use x and y instead of relative x and y because I think that will work better for this application. I'm going to multiply by a and divide by w. Now I'm going to look at an oscillator of v.x. Okay, so I can see I have it divided into sort of lines, but I want to narrow those down, so I'm going to do a smooth step, and I'm going to have an edge and an edge plus a smoothing factor. So for the smooth step, the edge value will control the thickness of the line, and the S will control how smooth it is on the edges, because sometimes you don't want it to look sort of pixelated if you don't have that. So I need to add a 2 0 to 1 sliders. One of them will be for the edge, and the other one will be S for the smoothing factor. This will actually be the width of the line, and this will be how smooth it is. If I bring this down, I'll just bring this down to 0, and I'll bring this up. Now, if I look, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 divisions, so it's not 8.5 divisions. So I need 8.5 divisions, and that's because the oscillator has a wavelength of 2, and so I have to multiply this by 2. Now if I count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.5. So I have the correct number of divisions. I'm going to copy that and multiply it, and then paste it over here. And I'm going to change the x to a y. So there are my divisions. Now I want to make use of this div factor. So in order to make use of that, all I have to do is multiply by d. So I'm multiplying by 2dA and dividing by w. Now if I set this to 1, it'll just be 1 division per inch, 2 divisions per inch, and there's 4, and I usually like 5. And if you zoom in, you can see them. You can add a little bit of smoothness to this, or make the lines a little thicker. I'm just going to set this down to 1 for now. Now up here in the corners, I'd like to be able to position this so it's centered on the paper so that it's aligned to this corner. So I'm going to add 2 more 0 to 1 range input sliders, and I will call one IX and the other one IY. And I'll label this one the offset in the X direction, and this one offset in the Y direction. And I'm just going to, inside of the oscillator here with the v.x, I'm going to add IX, and inside of this oscillator with the v.y, I'm going to add I.y. Now it's aligned to this corner, but I could bring it back, you know, to sort of center this. Leave that one, center it like that, or just leave these here. So I'm just going to leave those up there for now, and then I'll set this to 5. Now I'm going to add a gradient map to this one. I'm going to add one called graph paper. So it has sort of the classic blue graph paper look. I'm going to drag that down on top of this. The first value is set to 72B6D9. The second value is at 74%, and that's just all F's, and then the last value is all F's as well. So there's the basic graph paper. I can control the size of it in inches and then the number of divisions per inch. I'm going to go to Affinity Designer, and I'm going to start with a new document. I'm going to put this one in landscape mode. Make sure it's in RGB8, so you might have to go to color and change it from CMYK to RGB8. Create that. I'm going to view the grid and axes to set this up, and I'm going to click on Show Grid, and I'm going to use basic grid, and I'm going to have 5 divisions per inch. That's what my grid looks like. Now I'm going to create a simple shape on here. I'll have a guard room. Now I think I would like to have this set up so I have a stroke of 2 like that. I'll leave it the gray color, I guess that's okay. And then maybe this is, I'm going to have this be some goblins, and I'm going to have a little tower next to it. Maybe there's part of a castle. And then I'm going to have, I think, a large common room over here. And then I think I'll make a throne room. I'll choose the pen tool, and this will be a little fancier with angled corners. I'll double click on this one to end that shape, even though it didn't fill it in. I'll deal with that later. And then over here, I'll just have a little secret room off to the side, like that. Okay. Now I'm going to select all of these and right click on that and assign these to a group. And I'm going to lock that group so that they won't move when I drag new shapes on top of them. So that's the main reason I'm doing that. Okay, now I'm going to add in an entrance, and I'm going to connect these together. And I want to make sure that they sort of overlap if there's a question about them overlapping. And just connect that and that, and just make a connection here off the side. You can see if you don't lock it, it'll try to select that, so that's why I locked the others. Alright, now I've got all those selected. I'm going to highlight all of this. Now this is locked, so I need to turn the lock off. Okay, I'm going to try that again. Okay, now I've got them all highlighted, and I'm going to do a shape builder, and I'm just going to select all of these to make my shape. Like that. And then you have to hit enter to transform it into the other shape. And then I'm going to choose the move tool, and I'm going to click off of it, and then I'm going to move it around because sometimes I will have left some little parts of shapes behind. So this time I didn't. I don't need this group anymore, so I'll delete that. Now I'm going to duplicate this because I'm going to have one layer to fill with the grid, and the other layer will be just for the outline. Now I'm going to go back to my graph paper that I made, and I don't need this pixel layer, I just need the gradient map and the procedural texture. So I'm going to copy those two. Either Control C or right click and click copy. And then I'm going to select this one and I'm going to paste it in. Oh, and I need to, if it didn't go into it, I'm going to drag it on top. Now this one is blocking it, but if I change the fill to transparent, there, I can see that. Now, let's see what happened here. Oh, the gradient map went below. I don't want that. I want that up above it. Okay, and then this isn't aligned properly, and the reason is it's set to 8.5 inches in width, and if you remember, this one is now 11 inches in width, so I'm going to change that 8.5 to 11, and now the grid is aligned properly with the shape. And then I'm going to turn off the grid so it's not being shown, and I have it like that. Now I think if I move this shape around, let's see, let's just turn off this shape. If I grab this shape and move it around, the grid stays, it does not move with the shape, so there's that. I'm going to turn the grid back on again and lock this to the grid again. Now the other thing I could do, I can edit my procedural texture filter here, and so if I wanted to bring this up to 10 like that, now I've doubled the grid size and it's still on the shape. Now if I wanted to bring this all back into Affinity Photo for some reason, I could, but I want to make sure I have my Affinity Photo document set up to match this document. So if I wanted to do that, I'd go into Affinity Photo and create a new document, and I want to make sure it's in landscape mode if the other document was in landscape mode, and also RGB8. I can create that, and then I can paste this in, and it should have come in correctly. Yeah. Now I'm going to set this up for metric graph paper, so I'm going to choose a new document, portrait mode, and I'll choose A4, which is 210 by 297 millimeters. Make sure it's in RGB8 mode and create that. So I need to fill this with black. I will add a single procedural texture filter. I'll add a single equation, assign it to all 3 channels. I'll add a single real input. This is the page size, and it'll be in millimeters, and so it'll be 210 millimeters wide. And then I'm going to have, instead of divisions, I'll have another real value. I call it D, and this will be millimeters per division instead of divisions per inch. And I'll set that to 18, just in case you want to do 18 millimeters. I'm going to add a 0 to 1 slider for the edge, which will be the thickness of the lines, and a 0 to 1 slider for the smoothness of the lines. You could call this thickness, I guess, if you wanted to. And then I'll start with variable v equals a vec2, a 2-element vector of x and y, and times a divided by w. And I know that I have to multiply this by 2, so I'll do that. Times 2. In this case, I'm going to divide by D instead of multiplying it, because it's millimeters per division instead of divisions per inch. And then I will add an oscillator of v.x. Let's see what that looks like. So that looks like that. And then I'm going to put a smooth step on this with E and E plus S. Like that. And then bring this down, and let's bring this down all the way. Okay, so that should be correct. Now I think I will add an IX and an IY, because I might want to offset these. So IX, so I'm going to add an IX in here. So I add my IX, yeah, so I can move this around. That's good. And then I'm going to copy this, multiply, and paste it, and change the X to a Y and the X to a Y there. Okay, and so I can adjust it like that. And then add my graph paper gradient map to this. Bring that in. And then if I wanted to do 25, I could do that, or 18, or any other number, 10. Okay, so that's how you can make graph paper using procedural textures, either in inches or metric, and apply it to a shape. Let me know if you have any comments or questions, and thanks for watching.